Let's get some opposition reaction to today's $82 billion announcement. Outgoing Conservative leader Andrew Scheer joins me now from Regina. Mr. Scheer, good to see you. Are you on board with the measures that the finance minister proposes today?
Mm-hmm. Well, Conservatives will always support efforts and measures that get help directly into the pockets and into the hands of Canadians. I've heard from many of my own constituents, as I'm sure every MP has, about people who have had their shifts canceled, who have major anxieties about how they're going to pay their utilities and their mortgage, and their rent. So we do look at these we're glad to see that this type of support. We do have some questions, of course, as you would expect from parliamentarians about exactly how it's going to be implemented and get into the hands of Canadians who need it, as well as gaps that may exist that have not yet been addressed. And we know that we're going to be sitting at some point next week, so we are going to spend the next few days talking to our counterparts, bringing up those concerns as well.
So what I'm understanding from what you're saying is you are behind this emergency legislation. Will you be coming back to the House next week when the House is recalled?
Well, I'm talking with the government right now. I had a very productive conversation with Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland today. We're talking about the logistics of returning the House and what that might mean for parliamentarians who are far away from Ottawa, and so we're looking at some options in that respect. We believe that these are unprecedented times. You know, people are going through hardship, not because of any fault of their own, but because of this global pandemic, and that is an appropriate time for the government to step in and provide relief. I'm talking to small business owners who haven't made a poor business decision, but they're not suffering economically because they're not managing their businesses properly. They're suffering because of a global pandemic, and they're being told to close their doors. So we believe it's entirely appropriate for the government to respond to that. We do, of course, want to exercise our due diligence. We do want to make sure that there's a proper oversight and accountability on that. When we agreed to the motion to suspend Parliament for a number of days, we did build in some mechanisms to ensure that opposition parties could go through the spending once it was announced, and that ultimately there would be that oversight. So we're going to continue to press for that, but recognizing that we do need to react quickly, because people are experiencing this in real time. They're going through the financial hardship that is affecting them in real time. They don't want to have excuses as to why they have to wait for some of this relief to be provided. So we're going to be encouraging the government to move quickly, but in a responsible fashion as well.
When you say quickly, Mr. Scheer, because I think that those people out there who are listening to us right now are wondering, okay, this is a good first step. There's some relief on the way, but how fast do you figure Canadians can get that money?
Mm-hmm. Well, we've shown in the past when parliamentarians can find that common ground. And I have to say, I do believe there's a great deal of common ground and goodwill between the opposition parties. We're going to have philosophical debates and differences in some of the some of the regular topics that come up in Parliament. But this is something unprecedented that really has brought us all together to look at what we can do for people. So when we put our minds together, when we agree to focus on that common ground, we can accomplish things very quickly. You saw that last week when we had the government spending bills go through the House very, very quickly over to the Senate before this break week. So I'm optimistic that we can find that common ground. On the call today was a great spirit of cooperation. We expressed some concerns. I feel confident that the government heard those concerns and some of the gaps that we've been hearing from our constituents on, and I feel that at the very least we're going to have an opportunity to put some more ideas on the table for the government to consider.
I want to go quickly to the border. Now, it's the Canadians and the Americans are closing the border to visitors and tourists. Should this have been done sooner?
Well, this is something that, first I want to acknowledge that when something like this happens, it is unprecedented, and it is a challenge for every government around the world. We're seeing lots of governments of all different political stripes go through some of these challenges. But I do think it's fair to point out that Canadians were looking for some consistency of messaging on this. Just last week, when members of the Conservative Party asked questions in the House as to why the government wasn't restricting travel, we were told by government ministers that it was ineffective, that they were not going to restrict travel from had experienced a spike in cases. Just a few days later, of course, they had reversed position. So if it was a good idea today, if it was a good idea yesterday, surely it would have been a good idea last week. But
unfortunately, Mr. Scheer, we have lost the audio. That was Andrew Scheer in Regina. Thank you for being there. If you can still hear us, this is live television, ladies and gentlemen.